The Riverside County Courthouse hummed with anticipation on a sweltering June morning in 2025. Spectators crowded the gallery, their whispers weaving a tapestry of curiosity and judgment. At the defendant's table stood 19-year-old Darius Reed, a lean figure with piercing brown eyes and a composure that seemed almost out of place for someone facing felony charges. His hands rested calmly at his sides, betraying none of the nerves one might expect from a young man in his position. Darius was charged with grand theft auto and evading arrest, serious accusations that could derail his future before it began. Judge Clara Thornton, a veteran jurist with a reputation for efficiency, surveyed the courtroom from her elevated bench. Her bifocals glinted under the fluorescent lights as she adjusted a stack of case files. "Let's keep this moving," she said, her voice carrying a hint of impatience. "I've got a packed schedule." A ripple of laughter passed through the gallery, and the prosecutor, Nathan Lowell, allowed himself a faint smirk. To them, this was just another routine case. A young defendant, a predictable outcome. But Darius Reed was no ordinary defendant. He was about to turn their assumptions inside out. While most teenagers spent their days chasing trends or scrolling through social media, Darius had grown up in a different world. His aunt, Lorraine Baxter, a legal secretary with over 25 years of experience, had turned their modest apartment into a makeshift law library. Case files, legal journals, and annotated statutes lined the shelves, and Darius absorbed them with a hunger that surprised even Lorraine. By 17, he could dissect a police report with the precision of a seasoned paralegal, spotting inconsistencies that others overlooked. To Judge Thornton, though, he was just another name on the docket, another face in a parade of defendants she'd seen over her decades on the bench. Nathan Lowell rose to present the prosecution's case, his voice smooth and confident. He painted a vivid picture. Darius, allegedly caught near a stolen Lexus RX on a quiet street in Moreno Valley, his fingerprints lifted from the driver's side door, and a breathless chase through darkened alleys as he fled from pursuing officers. The evidence, Lowell argued, was airtight: fingerprints, eyewitness accounts, and a police report that seemed to leave no room for doubt. "This is a straightforward case of theft and defiance of law enforcement," he concluded, casting a glance at Darius as if to say, "You're done." The gallery nodded along, and Judge Thornton scribbled a note, her expression unreadable. Darius, however, remained unfazed. He knew the prosecution's case was built on quicksand, and he was ready to expose every crack. When the defense's turn came, Darius's public defender, a harried woman named Ellen Shapiro, stood to speak. But Darius placed a gentle hand on her arm and rose to his feet. "With all due respect, Your Honor," he said, his voice steady and clear, "I'll be representing myself." A hush fell over the courtroom. Spectators exchanged glances, some amused, others incredulous. Judge Thornton leaned forward, her eyebrows arching. "You're sure about that, Mr. Reed?" "Absolutely," Darius replied, meeting her gaze without hesitation. Lowell let out a soft chuckle, leaning back in his chair. "This should be interesting," he muttered, loud enough for the front row to hear. The gallery tittered, expecting a spectacle, a teenager stumbling through legal jargon, outmatched by a seasoned prosecutor. They were wrong. Darius launched into his defense with the precision of a surgeon. He began by questioning the responding, Officer Sergeant Michael Vargas, who sat stiffly in the witness stand. "Can you confirm the exact time you arrived at the scene?" Darius asked, his tone polite but probing. Vargas hesitated, glancing at his notes. Darius pressed further, requesting access to the patrol car's GPS logs to verify the officer's whereabouts during the alleged chase. "If you were on duty, as you claim, those logs should match your testimony," he said. The officer's confidence wavered, and a murmur ran through the jury. Next, Darius turned to the fingerprint evidence. He pointed out that the forensic report lacked a chain of custody record, a critical detail that raised questions about its reliability. "Your Honor, the prosecution hasn't even brought the forensic technician to testify," he noted. "How? Can we trust evidence we can't cross-examine?" He faced the jury, his voice steady but compelling. "Finding my fingerprints on a car door doesn't mean I stole it. It's like saying you robbed a bank because you touched the counter during a deposit." The metaphor landed perfectly. Simple, relatable, undeniable. Several jurors nodded, their attention now fixed on Darius. Judge Thornton's pen paused, mid-note, her eyes narrowing as she studied the young man before her. Lowell, sensing the shift in the room, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Then came the moment that changed everything. Darius produced a copy of the police report, flipping to a page the prosecution had barely mentioned. He read aloud a statement from the car's owner, Mr. Raymond Delgado, who described the thief as wearing a bright red hoodie and a silver chain necklace. Darius stepped forward, unbuttoning his shirt collar to reveal bare skin. No necklace, no tattoos, nothing. "Your Honor, I don't own a red hoodie," he said. "And security footage from a nearby 7-Eleven, which I've submitted as exhibit, shows me wearing a black jacket that night." He paused, letting the words sink in. The prosecution conveniently left that out. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Lowell's face reddened as he fumbled through his notes, caught off guard. The jury leaned forward, hanging on Darius's every word. Even the bailiff, usually stoic, raised an eyebrow. Darius wasn't done. He methodically dismantled the prosecution's timeline, pointing out inconsistencies in the officer's account of the chase. He introduced phone records showing he'd been texting a friend from a different location at the time of the alleged theft. Each piece of evidence was a brick pulled from the prosecution's crumbling wall, and Darius wielded them with the skill of a veteran litigator. "The only thing tying me to this crime," he said, turning to the jury, "is a rush to judgment and a police report riddled with holes. They saw a young man in the wrong place and assumed guilt. That's not evidence. That's prejudice." The silence that followed was profound, the kind that descends when truth slices through pretense. Jurors sat frozen, some scribbling notes, others staring at Darius with newfound respect. Lowell's earlier smirk was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped grimace. Judge Thornton leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable but her eyes locked on Darius. She'd presided over thousands of cases, but this was different. This wasn't just a defense. It was a reckoning. For a long moment she said nothing, letting the weight of Darius's words settle over the room. Then, with a slow nod, she spoke. "Case dismissed." The courtroom exploded. Gasps, cheers, and scattered applause filled the air. Reporters in the back row scrambled to their feet, already typing headlines on their phones. Spectators whispered to one another, some in disbelief, others in awe. Darius remained calm, gathering his papers with the same steady hands he'd shown throughout. He hadn't come for applause or headlines. He'd come to expose a system that too often convicted, on autopilot. As the crowd dispersed, Lorraine waited for him in the courthouse lobby. Her eyes were red, but her smile was wide. She pulled him into a fierce hug. "You scared me half to death," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Had to do it," Darius replied softly. "They didn't give me a choice." Across the courtyard. Judge Thornton lingered near the courthouse entrance, her usual brisk stride slowed. She watched Darius and Lorraine disappear into the crowd, her face etched with something new. Reflection, perhaps, or respect. This case would stay with her, a reminder that justice wasn't just about clearing dockets. It was about listening, questioning, and seeing beyond the surface. Darius Reed hadn't just won his freedom. He'd exposed the fragility of a system that leaned too heavily on assumptions and shortcuts. His performance in that courtroom wasn't just a defense, it was a declaration. The system wasn't unbreakable, and he'd proven it. But this was only the beginning. Darius wasn't destined to stand at the defendant's table again. His future lay elsewhere, perhaps at the prosecutor's podium, challenging the system from within or behind a judge's bench, ensuring others got the fairness he'd fought for. Because Darius Reed wasn't just fighting for himself,